Welcome into another episode of Christ in a Culture War. It is your host, Jesse Williams, and this is episode 4 of the narrative of the Bible as a story. And I want to make a quick announcement after further thinking, and by further thinking, I meant just in the last 5 seconds before I hit record. I have made the decision to stop recording this as an audio version, and I'm only going to post it on YouTube. The reason for that is I spend too much time clicking on my levels and then trying to upload it, and then when this was able to go to multiple different platforms, to like Spotify, Apple, Google, which no longer does podcasts, and a bunch of other smaller podcasts, it made a lot of sense. So now, if you comment on the YouTube video and there is enough support for me to start uploading this onto Spotify, then so be it. But hold on. So once again, in fact, we won't even do the mic because it's not plugged in, right? So Scatterbrain Jesse, we're just gonna do YouTube videos. Yeah, it's just shooting the video off the phone, trying to read the scripture. I've got Enduring Word Bible commentary pulled up, trying to check the levels, trying to get the mic right. And honestly, I'm not complaining about this, but the views don't warrant that. I work full time. I've actually got notes. It's kind of hard to see. And so there is work that goes into this podcast, but I'm not going to waste time looking down, looking at my levels. And so there's that announcement. The other announcement is that the podcast continues. This is the narrative of the Bible. And so the goal is to tell a coherent story using scripture and telling the story, right? So I already outlined in an intro video, we started Adam, we end in Revelation. And so you would expect it to go, Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, the flood, Tower of Babel, Abraham. And while that is correct chronologically, there's an interesting book in the Old Testament that seems to be, on first glance, out of place and not super coherent to the chronological timeline of the story that God's trying to tell. And that is the topic of today's video, and that is the book of Job. So Job, now I'm not saying it's not important, it shouldn't be in the Bible. Absolutely, I think it should be. And that's why we're doing the book of Job before we continue. Because after this video, we go from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob to Joseph to Moses to Joshua to the Judges to Saul, David, the kingdom, the fall of the kingdom, the prophets, the prophesying of the coming Messiah. And then we may even take a quick break and break down what happens in the 400 years between the book of Malachi and Genesis. I haven't made up my mind on that. It may be what we call a bonus episode, right? Because it's not in the Bible, so it's not the narrative of the Bible, but it's history. So we may do an offshoot video. We may or may not. But for today, I was going through the timeline and I'm like, well, if I don't do Job now, then, because here's the thing. I want to read this from the Enduring Word Bible commentary. Now I have the app on my phone, but since I'm using the phone to record, luckily it's available on the computer or the laptop. So Enduring Word, let me go back up. Okay, so their commentary says that the author, date, and place of the book of Job are all uncertain. It may be that Job himself recorded his experiences in the book, or there may well have been another anonymous author. Judging by the style of the Hebrew it uses, some scholar Job to be the oldest book of the Old Testament. That's what I believe. I think it was one of the oldest books written, not the oldest in events, because obviously the oldest event is the creation of the universe, and then it starts with Adam, right? Some scholars judge Job to be the oldest book in the Old Testament. Quotations here Ancient it is beyond all dispute. It probably belongs to the period covered by the book of Genesis and possibly to the time of Abraham. Its lessons, therefore, is the oldest lesson we could have. It takes us back to the first lesson taught in the Bible itself. End quote. Some guy named Bullinger. No disrespect to Bullinger, dude. I just don't know who you are. I'm sure you're important because you're quoted on this. The text of Job is so ancient that in some places we really don't know the exact meaning of some of the words, yet the general meaning is clear. The disgust expressed in Job's remark, some letters, is tasteless. Job 6:6 can be appreciated even though we still don't know what that substance is. You're going to find that there's certain places where translators, especially the earliest translators, were finding things that they didn't know the exact meaning for, right? But we have the big picture of the Bible. We know the general story. We do believe that the translators and the early scribes did the best that they could. So what's the point of all this? The point is that there is dispute, and I went online and I looked at several different sources. I'm not going to name the sources because I don't remember. It was 4 or 5 days ago. But I was curious what the consensus was of when the events of the book of Job took place. We know there's sacrifices involved. We know that it's probably after the flood because it's written down. I mean, they found the book of Job. Someone wrote it down. Unless Noah, anything that's claimed to have been written before the flood, Noah would have had to take on the ark with him. Unless you believe in a local flood, but we've already covered that. And so the time frame seems to be, what I gathered was between Noah and Abraham, either before or after, but in the same era. So some people think he may have lived a little before Abraham. A lot of people believe he was right after Abraham. The reason we're doing Job now is because I don't want to start, the same reason why I didn't introduce Abraham's story in a previous episode is the episode where I start with Abram, who becomes Abraham, starts with him. It starts with his story, not because he's the most important. Obviously, that's God, the Trinitarian God. And if you want my views on the oneness theology discussion, go to my TikTok, Christ in a Culture War. I think that's what it's still called. I'll link it in the description, but actually I probably won't link it in the description. I may throw it in a comment, but if you follow me here, most likely send me a message. I can get you in contact with my TikTok. A lot of you already watch my TikTok. I did a short video, 3-minute video, 3 or 4 minute video on that subject. I'm not a oneness, apostolic oneness or whatever. Like, I just think I disagree with that. And so I decided that Job is too important to leave out. Because like I said, this is not a series where I'm going to go through word by word, verse by verse, every book of the Bible. I'm not qualified to do that, for one. I haven't studied enough. I've studied a lot, but I haven't studied enough to be word by word like a John MacArthur or an Alan Nolan or that. If you don't know who Alan Nolan is, Cornerstone Fellowship Church on YouTube. Anyways, I'm getting way off topic. So we're doing Job. Why is Job important? Number one, it's in the Bible. Number two, it brings up some very important questions about suffering, God allowing suffering, who causes suffering, how we are to respond to suffering. Is it okay to question God? Why it's good to have good Christian friends around you. Can your friends give you bad advice? And then we see an amazing response from God in chapters 38 through 41. If you see me looking down, I'm either looking at the computer screen where I have the YouVersion Bible or the Enduring Word Bible commentary pulled up, or I'm looking at my notes. So let's get into the book of Job. So once again, we're not going to read every verse, but we're going to read what's important. So I'll tell you where we stop and then where we pick back up. So Job 1, chapter 1, verse 1. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was blameless and upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil. Now, when we say blameless, it doesn't mean he was perfect. But compared to other people and in the sight of God, because of Job's heart and obedience and willing to follow God, in that context, he's considered blameless. One who feared God and turned away from evil. There was born to him 7 sons and 3 daughters. He possessed 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 female donkeys, and very many servants, so that this man was the greatest of all the people of the East. So we see right now, Job is blessed. Hashtag blessed, prosperity gospel, hear me. I'm just kidding. But Job, God didn't bless Job. Like, Job got it all. His sons used to go and hold a feast in the house of each one on his day, and they would send and invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. And when the days of the feast had run their course, Job would send and consecrate them, and he would rise early in the morning and offer burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, "It may be that my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts." Thus Job did continually. All right, that's verses 1 through 5. Let's stop there. So Job is so faithful to God that he's offering sacrifices for sins that he doesn't even know his kids committed, right? So he's like, okay, they have these feasts, they sit, they kick it, they eat, and they drink. And just in case they may have messed up, God, I'm offering sacrifices on their behalf. And so Job is a model of faith, is what it looks like so far. Of course, and most of you already know the story, but we're still going to go into it. Day 6. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. The Lord said to Satan, okay, we're going to stop right there. So, now there was a day when the sons of God, who are the sons of God? The angels. Anywhere where you see sons of God in the Old Testament, it means angels. The sons of God in Noah, the sons of God here. It is an ancient Hebrew reference to angels. Now, Wes Huff, I think, said this, and other people have said this. Angel is not what you are, it's what you do. Because angel just means messenger. So these are messengers of God. Now, you can go read Michael Heiser, rest his soul. You can read all these angel and demonology books. You can even go into the book of Enoch and the different ranks of angels. All right, cool. But just know that angels in the Bible have roles. There's archangels that fight on the Lord's behalf. There's messenger angels like Gabriel, and that show up to Mary to tell her that she's going to give birth to Jesus. And Gabriel's in some other places. Can't think of it off the top of my head. If you know, put it in the comments, right? So these sons of God are presenting themselves before God, Yahweh. I'm assuming in heaven, right? So, yes, because God's in heaven right now, right? The new heavens and the new earth haven't come down. So they're presenting themselves before God, and Satan is among them. So we can see in the text that at this time, Satan still has access to the throne room of God. There may not be a place found for him in heaven, but he can still go to God and talk to God. And basically, he goes to God and accuses us. The Lord said to Satan, verse 7, from where have you come? I'm not going to lie, we may switch to a different version. I'm reading out of the ESV just because the ESV is so word for word that it's sometimes hard to read on screen. Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro on the earth and from walking up and down on it. And the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil? Then Satan answered the Lord, does Job fear God for no reason? Have you not put a hedge around him and his house and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will curse you to your face. And the Lord said to Satan, behold, all that he has is in your hand. Only against him do not stretch out your hand. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. All right. So this might bother people. We're going to take a drink of water. As they'd say in basic training when I was in the military, drink water. So Satan goes with the other angels. God's like, yo, look at my homeboy Job. Job's awesome, right? Satan's like, of course he is. You've given him everything. Take away some stuff. Let's see what happens. Now, I've heard it said that people think that this is God and Satan having like a little contest. And to me, that's blasphemous, because there is no contest. Like, God's will be done. God is God. It's not like God and Satan are good and evil equals. Like, God could think it and Satan is gone. So this begs a question that people always ask: why does God allow bad things to happen to good people? The truth is that there are no good people. Now there's people who do better than other people. There are levels, right? I'm not saying that like a murderer is considered in our eyes, we would look at a murderer to be worse than someone who steals 10 cents out of the donation jar, right? But in God's eyes, he's holy. He cannot be in the presence of sin. Now, this isn't why he punishes Job, but Satan's job is to go and accuse us before the Father. Now, as Christians, we have a mediator, that we have a defense attorney in Jesus. And all Jesus has to say is, I died for that. And he's in the book of life. Like, he's covered. So, this also doesn't mean that every time something bad happens to us that Satan's going up into heaven and being like, hey, I want to make sure that I want to trip over a foot. So he'll say a cuss word and then I can say, haha, look how bad he is, right? But this conversation is interesting, right? And so we know that Satan goes before God, and God's like, all right, you can touch his belongings, just don't touch him. Let's go to the rest of the story. Now, verse 13, now there was a day when the sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house, and there came a messenger to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys feeding beside them, and the Sabaeans fell upon them and took them and struck down their servants with the edge of the sword. And I alone have escaped to tell you this. While he was yet speaking, there came another and said, the fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them, and I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was yet speaking, there came another and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 groups and made a raid on the camels and took them and struck down the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was yet speaking, there came another and said, your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house, and yet a great wind came across the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house, and it fell upon the young people, and they are dead, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Then Job arose and tore his robe and shaved his head and fell on the ground and worshipped. And he said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And all this Job did not sin or charge God with wrong. So, Satan's given free reign, and Job loses all his stuff and his children, right? And how does Job respond? He worships, and he says, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, and the Lord taken away, has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. So right now we've got Job responding the way that we wish we would respond when bad things happen, right? I'm not going to name any names, but there's 2 individuals in my church that I have, besides the pastor. I mean, he's the leader of the flock, so I've got much respect for the pastor. So Kenny, if you watch this, yes, I have a lot of respect for you. But there's 2 people in my church in particular. There's one guy that I want to say lost a child, or like I know he lost a child, either in childbirth or during the pregnancy, right? And then there's another guy whose daughter has leukemia and is going through a very strong struggle. So keep them in your prayers. Why do I bring them up? Because, at least from what I see, these individuals respond in a way that I'm not sure that I could. I've got a 4-year-old son, and I have been party to a miscarriage before. And so, and I've had deaths in my family and friends that have died, right? And so, and when I say friends that have died, I mean friends that have died like in early adulthood, from various circumstances. And the reason I bring these 2 individuals up is not to highlight their pain, but to highlight their testimony. Whenever I get mad at God for dumb stuff that usually is the cause of things that I have done or things that I have said, I just lean back and I remember them, and I'm like, man, it's such a testimony that they still praise God. They still teach God's word. They still have a smile on their face. They still have hope in God, in Christ, right? And so I bring them up because they remind me of Job. And it's like, man, like, it's just a testimony. If either one of you watch this video, just know that, like, you're a testimony. And I would say I want to be like you when I grow up, but I'm older. So as I'm still growing in the faith, as I grow up in the faith, I want to be more like you guys. All right. So that being said, let's go to Job chapter 2. This may be a long video, but that's okay, because I'll watch it if no one else will. And thank you to all the viewers that watch this channel. Please subscribe. Please share. Please. I just want to get this out. And pray that I stop looking at the views, because I'm still going to check just curiosity to see how the videos do, but sometimes I get discouraged, and we've got a long way to go in this series, and so I would like to get to Revelation some point, hopefully this year, but it might be next year. All right, Job chapter 2. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them to present himself before the Lord. Sorry, guys, I'm thirsty. All right. And the Lord said to Satan, "From where have you come?" Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro on the earth and from walking up and down on it." And the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil? He still holds fast to his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him without reason." Then Satan answered the Lord and said, "Skin for skin, all that a man has he will give for his life. But stretch out your hand and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse you to your face." And the Lord said to Satan, "Behold, he is in your hand, only spare his life." So what this tells us is, like, Satan can't just go out and kill people. Satan has to have permission for the things that he does. That's why this isn't a war between God and Satan. The war is done. Read Revelation. We know how it ends. I think Satan knows how it ends. I mean, I'm pretty sure he can read, but I think that his pride and his arrogance is so much that he still thinks he can thwart it somehow, or at the very least, he can keep as many of us from God as possible. And so, but he cannot do it without authority. Satan has no authority, right? So Satan went out, this is verse 7. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with a loathsome sores from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. And he took a piece of broken pottery in which to scrape himself while he sat in the ashes. Then his wife said to him, "Do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die." But he said to her, "You speak as one of the foolish women would speak. Shall we receive good from God, and shall we not receive evil?" And all this Job did not sin with his lips. All right. So what we are not going to do is read all 48. I'm going to read some headlines. I'm going to pick out some verses to read. But just know that as of now, Job has not sinned against God. He has not cursed God, even though his wife told him to. And people might give his wife flack for that. And yeah, you shouldn't do that. But Job's wife is probably reacting, honestly, how most of us react in these kind of circumstances. Like, let's not pretend, me included, that when bad things happen, we're just like, praise God. We should, but we don't. So Job's wife has a realistic expectation. She's wrong in her response, and Job is correct in correcting her. So Job's got all these sores on him. He's lost his children. He's lost his house, or maybe not his house, but he's lost all his, and when it says he lost all these animals, that's his source of income. That's his source of wealth. That's his livelihood. So Job's lost everything. It's like the victims of Hurricane Katrina, like everything's gone, right? You got to start from scratch. So in this point of the story, Job's 3 friends show up. Now, there's actually 4 friends, but there's 3 and then there's 1. And then we get God's response, right? So, verse 11, now when Job's 3 friends heard all of this evil that had come upon him, they came each from his own place. Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. They made an appointment together to come to show him sympathy and comfort him. But when they saw him from a distance, they did not recognize him. They raised their voices and wept, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads toward heaven. And they sat with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights. No one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his suffering was very great. So in this instance, I think that Job's friends, in the beginning, I think they do what they should do. They just sit with there, and they're just there for him. Sometimes when people go through hard times, they don't need our words of wisdom. They don't need us to quote our favorite Bible verse. Not saying there's anything wrong with Bible verses. Don't hear me on this, but people will have a death in their family, and then you're like, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. It's like, that's not the moment to tell them that. The Bible tells us not to grieve as those with no hope. It never tells us not to grieve. When Lazarus died, Jesus wept. Jesus was sad. But he didn't weep as those with no hope. And even Mary and Martha, when Mary and Martha come to Jesus, they're like, we know you can do all things. He would be alive if you were here. And then when Jesus tells them, they're like, we know that you're going to raise him up on the last day. We know that, but we're hurting. And Jesus is like, no, wait a minute. Like, I'm fixing to do something crazy here. Like, no, like, watch this, right? Like, and then he raises Lazarus from the dead, and they still try to kill him, right? And then they do, and then he resurrects, and that's why we are Christians. So right now, Job has gone through a horrific time, and I don't know why I'm doing my hands like Trump, but so at this moment, Job is chilling with his 7 friends. I mean, obviously he's not chilling. He's in immense pain and suffering and sorrow and despair. And then his friends, well, first off, Job. So Job 3, after this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the days of his birth. And Job said, let the day perish on which I was born, and the night that said a man is conceived, and let that day be darkness. For God above not seek it, nor light shine upon it. Let gloom and deep darkness claim it. Let clouds dwell upon it. Let the blackness of the day terrify it. And this goes on and on. And Job laments, saying stuff like in verse 11, why did I not die at birth and come out from the womb and expire? Like, Job's like my life is pointless, right? Right, so Job's in a bad place. And then the first friend comes, and he's basically talking about, look, the innocent. The title of this, now, the titles are not in the original manuscript. Somebody came and added them for our benefit, right? So the titles are not scripture, but they're helpful. Then these names in the Old Testament, let me tell you, Eliphaz the Temanite, it's probably Temanite, or probably, I don't speak Hebrew, right? And said, if one ventures a word with you, will you be impatient? Yet who can keep from speaking? All right. Is not your fear of God your confidence in the integrity of your ways and your hope? Remember, this is verse 7, remember who that was innocent ever perished, O worthy upright cut off. As I have seen, those who plow iniquity and sow trouble reap the same. By the breath of God they perish, and by the blast of his anger they are consumed. The roar of the lion, the voice of the fierce lion, and the teeth of the young lion are broken. All right. So basically, in this whole chapter, and what his friends are basically going to do is they're going to basically say, Job, you must have done something wrong. Like, if you had done nothing wrong, none of this bad stuff would happen to you. Because you're good, good things will happen to you. That's how a lot of people think. That's where the whole concept of karma comes from. You do good, good things will happen to you. You sow good, good things will happen to you. You sow bad, bad things will happen to you. If you do bad, you're going to die, and then you're going to reincarnate, and you're going to come back as an elephant. And if you're a bad elephant, whatever that is, you're going to come back as a mosquito. And you're going to keep going through this cycle until one day you get it right, and then you become one with the universe or whatever. That's a lot of the Eastern mystic stuff. And I'm waving my hand just because I don't believe in it. Cool, you believe in that, but I don't want to live that way. I believe in Jesus. I believe in the gospel. I believe in the one true God. So that's what we teach here. So, not mocking Eastern religion. I just don't subscribe to it. But the book of Job proves that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people is completely false. Right? Sometimes we don't know why bad things happen. And so Eliphaz, in verse 17, can mortal man be in the right before God? Can a man be pure before his maker? No, we cannot. We need Jesus, who is perfect for us, and we are perfect in his righteousness, right? But this is in the Old Testament, and this is actually one of the things that Eliphaz says that I actually agree with. But his conclusions are wrong, right? All right, so then you go to Job chapter 5. He continues, and he just goes on and on and on. And so Eliphaz talks, and then Job replies. Then Job answered and said, "Oh, that my vexation were weighted in all my calamity." This is Job chapter 6. "And all my calamity laid in the balances, for then it would be heavier than the sand of the sea. Therefore my words have been rash, for the arrows of the Almighty are in me." Pause. This is where Job mistakes. And someone mentioned this. I think it was someone on TikTok. But the arrows of the Almighty were not in the God. God was not afflicting Job. God was allowing Satan to afflict Job. Not for anything Job had done, but everything is done for God's glory. Unbelievers will not understand this. They will like, well, that's a petty God. Listen, if I've existed eternally and I created everything with my words, like I spoke everything into existence, I should probably be glorified. And not only that, the New Testament tells us that God works out everything for the good of those who serve them. So everything that God does is going to work out for our good. We just don't see that good. We don't know what that good is. So like even right now I'm struggling financially and some stuff at work and in different issues, but I still hold on the faith that this is for my good somehow. Now, are there things that I self-inflict myself with? Absolutely. But I have to have faith that it's all going to work out for the good. The terrors of God are a rage against me. There's a lot of poetry here. And Job. So Job says in verse 28, "But now be pleased to look at me, for I will not lie to your face. Please turn, let no injustice be done. Turn now, my vindication is at stake. Is there any injustice on my tongue? Cannot my palate discern the cause of calamity?" And then Job talks about how his life has no hope in chapter 7. In chapter 8, Bildad speaks, and he's basically like, Job, you should repent. You must have done something wrong. Does the God prefer justice? Job answers, "There is no arbiter. Truly I know it is so, but how can a man be right before God? If one wished to contend with him, one could not answer him once in 1,000 times." True. "He is wise in heart and mighty in strength. Who has hardened himself against him succeeded." Goes on and on and on and on. In Job chapter 10, Job says, "I loathe my life. I will give free utterance to my complaint. I will speak in the bitterness of my soul." Job is going through it, y'all. "I will say to God, do not condemn me. Let me know why you contend against me. Does it seem good to you to oppress, to despise the work of your hands, and to favor the designs of the wicked?" Like, this is stuff that we really, like when bad people prosper, when truly evil, when true evil seems to be winning, I believe a lot of us look at this and we're like, God, why are the bad guys winning? "Do you see as man sees? Are your days as the days of man, or your years as man's years, that you seek out my iniquity and search for my sin, although you know that I am not guilty?" So Job is still glorifying God, but he's getting into this dangerous spot where he's starting to justify himself, right? Verse 11 of Job 10, "You clothed me with skin and flesh and knit me together with bones and sinews." I don't know what a sinew is. "You have granted my life in steadfast love, and your care has preserved my spirit." Okay, here we go, Job. "Yet these things you hid in your heart. I know that this was your purpose. If I sin, you watch me and do not acquit me of my iniquity. If I am guilty, woe to me. If I am in the right, I cannot lift up my head, for I am filled with disgrace, and look at my affliction. And were my head lifted up, you would hunt me like a lion and again work wonders against me. You renew your wit." Okay, so he goes on. And then he's like, "Why did you bring me out from the womb? Would that I had died before any eye had seen me." Like, Job is going through it, y'all. And I feel for Job. God's going to respond chapters later. Zophar the headings on this are sometimes kind of funny. It's like Zophar speaks, you deserve worse. Okay, so now Zophar is going to speak. Should a multitude of words go unanswered and a man full of talk be judged right? Should your babble silence men? And when you mock, should no one shame you? For you say, my doctrine is pure and I am clean in God's eyes. But oh, that God would speak and open his lips to you, and that he would tell you the secrets of wisdom. For it is manifold in understanding. Know that God exacts of you less than your guilt deserves. Can you find the deep things of God? Now, these guys aren't just complete morons. They're speaking some truth in this, but their conclusions are all wrong. They're all like, Job, this is your fault. Even when they say true things about God. So, like, when we get to his friends and what God requires of his friends, I'm not going to completely dismiss them, because we'll get to that at the end of the video. Can you find out the deep things of God? Can you find out the limit of the Almighty? Is it higher than heaven? What can you do? Deeper than Sheol? What can you know? Its measure is longer than the earth and broader than the sea. If he passes through and imprisons and summons the court, who can turn him back? For he knows worthless men. When he sees iniquity, will he not consider it? But a stupid man will get understanding when a wild donkey's colt is born a man. Okay, then he just goes on and on and on. And I say on and on. The book of Job is such an incredible book, because the mystery of when it was written and who wrote it and when it came out, but because it's poetry, it's the first poetic book of the Bible, but it's also got history in it too. So it's history and poetry. So it's like history, poetry, God speaks, conclusion, right? So Job's actually a really good book, but there's just so much that we cannot get to. But there is a verse I want to read here. You will lie down and none will make you afraid. This is verse 19, chapter 11. Many will court your favor, but the eyes of the wicked will fail. All way of escape will be lost to them, and their hope is to breathe their last. Very interesting passage there. Then Job replies, the Lord has done this. So he's still contending that, God's doing this to me. But Job says in chapter 13, behold, my eye has seen all this, my ear has heard and understood it. What you know, I also know. I am not inferior to you, but I would speak to the Almighty, and I desire to argue my case with God. Dangerous thing to do, people. As for you, you whitewash with lies, worthless physicians are you all. Job's like not hearing what these guys are trying to tell to him. Oh, that you would keep silent, and it would be your wisdom. Hear now my argument, and listen to the pleadings of my lips. Will you speak falsely for God and speak deceitfully for him? Will you show partiality toward him? Will you plead the case for God? Will it be well with you when he searches you out? Or can you deceive him as one deceives a man? This is like some foreshadowing here to the end of the book. He will surely rebuke you. In the secret you show partiality. Will not his majesty terrify you, and the dread of him fall upon you? There is some dope stuff in the book of Job. Your maxims are proverbs of ashes. Your defenses are defenses of clay. Let me have silence, and I will speak, and let come on me what may. Why should I take my flesh in my teeth and put my life in my hand? And though he slay me, I will hope in him. Yet I will argue my ways to his face. This will be my salvation, if the goodness shall not come before him. He was right in the first part. I will still hope in God. But then he's like, I'm going to argue my case to God. And he's suffering. I get it. Who is there that will contend with thee? Verse 19. For then I would be silent and die. Only grant me two things, that I will not hide myself from your face. Withdraw your hand from me, and let not dread of you terrify me. Then call, and I will answer. More foreshadowing. Or let me speak, and you reply to me. More foreshadowing. Little does Job know. How many are my iniquities and my sins? Make me know my transgressions and my sin. God's not going to do that. God's not going to answer Job in the way that he thinks he is. Why do you hide your face and count me as your enemy? Will you frighten a driven leaf and pursue dry chaff? For you write bitter things against me and make me inherit the iniquities of my youth. You put my feet in the stocks and watch all my paths. You set a limit for the soles of my feet. Man wastes away like a rotten thing, like a garment that is moth-eaten. So Job is like, all right, God's still in control, but I'm going to defend myself. And then he's also like wishing he was dead. Chapter 14, Job continues, death comes soon to us all. Eliphaz, here he comes again, talking about Job doesn't fear God. Job replies, you guys suck. You aren't comforting me. Job 17, verse 1, my spirit is broken, my days are extinct. The graveyard is ready for me. Surely there are mockers about me, and my eye dwells on their provocation. Lay down a pledge for me with you. Who is there that will put up security for me? Since you have closed their hearts to understanding, therefore you not let them triumph. He informs against his friends to get a share of their property. Okay. And then yeah, so Job's still like lashing out at his friends. Bildad, he speaks again, talking about God punishes the wicked. Job replies. I really like some of Job's replies. And Job answered and said, how long will you torment me? This is Job 19. And break me into pieces with words. These 10 times you have cast reproach upon me and are not ashamed to wrong me. And even if it be true that I have erred, my error remains with myself. If indeed you magnify yourselves against me and make my disgrace an argument against me, know that God has put me in the wrong and closed my net about me. Behold, I cry out violence, but I'm unanswered. I cry for help, but there is no justice. We relate to this. He has walled up my way so I cannot pass, and has set darkness upon my paths. He has stripped from me my glory and taken the crown from my head. He breaks me down on every side, and I am gone, and my hope he has pulled up like a tree. He has kindled his wrath against me and counts me as his adversary. Now Job's tripping, right? All right, so he's going on, and oh, hold on. Well, let's go to let's see. Let me get it. All right, so he talks about in verse 16, I called him a servant, but he gives me no answer. I must plead with him with my mouth for mercy. My breath is strange to my wife, and I am a stench to the children of my own mother. Even young children despise me. When I rise, they talk against me. All my intimate friends abhor me, and those who I loved have turned against me. My bones stick to my skin and to my flesh, and I have escaped by the skin of my teeth. Have mercy on me, oh you my friends, for the hand of God has touched me. Why do you like God pursue me? Why are you not satisfied with my flesh? Oh, that my words are written. Oh, that they were inscribed in a book. Well, Job, they are. For I know that my Redeemer lives, and at last he will stand upon the earth. And after my skin has been thus destroyed, yet in my flesh I shall see God, whom I shall see for myself. And my eyes shall behold and not another. My heart faints within me. If you say, how will we pursue him? The root of the matter is found in him. Be afraid of the sword, for wrath brings the punishment of the sword, that you may know that there is a judgment. So this tells you that Job had legitimate faith in God. He's just in a bad place, right? And this is why Job is an inspiration, because I think sometimes we feel we aren't allowed to question God ever. But I think that as long as we do it with a heavenly focus, I don't think it's wrong to say, God, I don't understand. But in that questioning, I feel like we have to have faith, and we have to say, okay, God, even though I don't understand what's going on, I know that you have a purpose, and I know that your will be done, not my will. C.S. Lewis says that hell is saying, my will be done. Heaven is saying, thy will be done, right? So God's will be done is me following God. My will lead me straight to hell. My will apart from God's will, right? All right. Zophar, he comes in and he's talking some noise. Job replies about the wicked prospering. Eliphaz just won't be quiet. He's talking about Job's wickedness. This is great. I'm just reading the titles here. Job replies, where is God? Bildad speaks, man can't be righteous. God's mercy is unsearchable. Job 27, I will remain my integrity. Just a little verse here. Verse 1, and Job again took up his discourse and said, as God lives, who has taken away my right, and the Almighty who has made my soul bitter, as long as my breath is in me, and the Spirit of God is in my nostrils, my lips will not speak falsehood, and my tongue will not utter deceit. Far be it from me to say that you are right. Till I die, I will not put away my integrity from me. I hold fast to my righteousness and will not let it go. So Job, while he is faithful, he does seem to rely a lot on his own righteousness while still trusting in God. All right. This is Job chapter 29, Job's summary defense. Right? And Job again took up his discourse and said, oh, that I were in the months of old, as in the days when God watched over me, when his lamp shone upon my head, and his light I've walked through darkness. I would read this chapter, because it's a really good chapter, Job chapter 29. Job chapter 29 through 31. It's a lot of verses. Yeah, we ain't gonna read all that because we're already at 45 minutes. And I want to get to some big picture points. All right, Elihu comes along. Elihu is the youngest of the group, right? He even says that. Because he burned in anger with Job because Job's justifying himself before God. He also burns with anger against Job's whack 3 friends because they're blaming Job. And Elihu's like, y'all are both wrong. And I'm going to read some of what he says. And Elihu, the son of Barachel, or Barachel, I'm going to say Barachel, the Buzite, answered and said, I am young in years. This is verse 6 of Job, chapter 32. I am young in years, and you were aged. Therefore I was timid and afraid to declare my opinion to you. I said, let days speak, and many years teach wisdom. But it is the spirit in man, the breath of the Almighty, that makes him understand. It is not the old. This is so true, who are wise, nor the age to understand what is right. Therefore I say, listen to me, let me also declare my opinion. Behold, I waited for your words, I listened for your wise sayings. While you searched out what to say, I gave you my attention, and behold, there was none among you who refuted Job or who answered his words. Beware lest you say, we have found wisdom, God may vanquish him, not a man. He has not directed his words against me, and I will not answer him with your speeches. They are dismayed, they answer no more, they have no word to say. And shall I wait because they do not speak, because they stand there and answer no more? I also will answer with my share. I also will declare my opinion, for I am full of words, a spirit within me constrains me. Behold, my belly is like wine that has no vent, and new wineskins ready to burst. I must speak that I may find relief. I must open my lips and answer. I will not show partiality to any man, or use flattery to any person, for I do not know how to flatter, else my maker should soon take me away. Elihu is spitting bars, as we would say in rap. So first he's going to rebuke Job. But now hear my speech, O Job, and listen to all my words. Behold, I open my mouth, and my tongue and my mouth speaks. My words declare the uprightness of my heart, and what my lips know, they speak sincerely. The Spirit of God has made me, and the breath of the Almighty gives me life. Answer me if you can. Set your words in order before me. Take your stand. Behold, I am toward God as you are. I too was pinched off from a piece of clay. Behold, no fear of me need terrify you. My pressure will not be heavy upon you. Surely you have spoken in my ears, and I have heard the sound of your words. You say, I am pure without transgression. I am clean, and there is no iniquity in me. Behold, he finds occasions against me. He counts me as his enemy. Okay, verse 12. So he's basically telling Job what Job said. Behold, in this you are not right, I will answer you, for God is greater than man. Why do you contend against him, saying he will answer none of man's words? For God speaks in one way, and in two through man does not perceive it. In a dream and a vision of the night, when the deep sleep falls on men while they slumber in their beds, and he opens the ears of men and terrifies them with warnings, that he may turn man aside from his deed and conceal pride from a man. He keeps back his soul from the pit and his life from perishing by the sword. Drink water. Man is also rebuked with pain on his bed. This is verse 19. And with continual strife in his bones, that his life loathes bread and his appetite the choicest of food. Okay, he goes on and on. He's speaking true. And then he exerts God's justice. But he's also like Job, like, you're not getting punished for what you did. All right. And then, so Elihu is basically glorifying God. Let's go to the end of chapter 37. So, yes, so basically from chapters 32 to 37, Elihu is basically been like, Job, you're wrong, your friends are wrong, God's right. And we're going to see why this is important at the end, after what I call God going off on Job. And God is just basically, he does something incredible. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge? Dress for action like a man. I will question you, and you make it known to me. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? We don't even really have to read the rest of the chapters. Because God literally is just like, yo, where were you when I made all this? Tell me if you have understanding, who has determined its measurement? Surely you know. Or who has stretched the line upon it? On what were its bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars, angels, sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. God's like, where were you when I created the earth and the sun and the stars sang for joy? Or who shut the sea with doors when it burst out of the womb, when I made clouds its garment and thick darkness its swaddling brand, and prescribed limits for it, and set bars and doors, and said, thus far shall you come, and no further, and here's your proud waves be stayed. Have you commanded the morning since your days began, and caused the dawn to know its place, that it might take hold of the skirts of the earth, and the wicked be shaken out of it? It is changed like clay under the seal, and its features stand out like a garment. For the wicked their light is withheld, and uplifted arm broken. All right, and so God goes on and on and on and on, right? And in a good way. All right. And then Job chapter 39, he says, do you know when the mountain goat gives birth? Do you observe the calving of the does? Can you number the months that they fulfill? Like, he just... Dude, if you've never read Job chapter 48 through 41, go read it. I'm not going to read it all here for you. God just is... All right, so Job 40. And the Lord said to Job, shall a fault finder contend with the Almighty? He who argues with God, let him answer it. Then Job answered the Lord and said, behold, I am of small account. What shall I answer you? I lay my hand on my mouth. I have spoken once. I will not answer twice, but I will proceed no further. And you would think that's the end. Nope. Two more chapters, basically. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, dress for action like a man. I will question you, and you make it known to me. Will you even put me in the wrong? Will you condemn me that you may be in the right? Verse 8. Verse 9. Have you an arm like God, that you can thunder with a voice like his? Hold on, there's something on my wall. And we're not going to edit that out because we keep it real around here. All right. Verse 9, have you an arm like God, and can you thunder with a voice like his? Adorn yourself with majesty and dignity. Clothe yourself with glory and splendor. Pour out the overflowings of your anger, and look on everyone who is proud and abase him. Look on everyone who is proud and bring him low. All right, then he goes, talks about the behemoth, the works of God. All right, we get to chapter 41. Can you draw out Leviathan with a fish hook? A large sea animal, which we're not quite sure what that was. And then God just keeps going. Like, he just, read it, man. I'm telling you, like, God is putting it on Job. Right? So Job 42, we get to the last chapter of the book. Right? I wanted to read more of Job, of God's response to Job, but there's so much there, and I want to commentate, and you can read it. Job 42, verse 1, then Job answered the Lord and said, I know that you can do all things, and that no purpose of yours can be thwarted. Who is this that hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore I have uttered what I did not understand, things too wonderful for me which I did not know. Hear, and I will speak. I will question you, and you make it known to me. I have heard you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. I want to read that again. Verse 5. I had heard of you by hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. After the Lord had spoken these words to Job, the Lord said to Eliphaz the Temanite, my anger burns against you and against your two friends, for you have not spoken of me what is right, as my servant Job has. Now therefore take 7 bulls and 7 rams, and go to my servant Job, and offer up a burnt offering for yourselves, and my servant Job shall pray for you, and I will accept his prayer not to deal with you according to your folly, for you have not spoken of me what is right, as my servant Job has. So Eliphaz the Temanite, and Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamanite went and did as the Lord had told them, and the Lord accepted Job's prayer. Who's not mentioned in this? Elihu. We don't hear from Elihu again. It's almost as if God's like, and kind of the only one that was right. And we're going to get to some final conclusions. But his friends were saying some correct things, but they're blaming Job. And they're like, they just keep on and on. And God's like, just because something bad happens to you doesn't mean it's because of something you did. Like, specifically, right? There are consequences for our actions, but like, there's a story when there's a man born blind, and then he's healed, or I can't remember if it's before or after, but the disciples are like, so the man's blind, is it because of his sin or his parents' sin? And it's like, nothing, it's so the glory of God can be shown, right? Like, because in that culture, they thought of like, if something bad happened to you, or if you were born into something, it's like you must have been born into sin, your parents must have did something, and now you're cursed, right? And they did have a foundational belief for that, but that wasn't always the case. And the Lord restored the fortunes of Job when he had prayed for his friends, and the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Then came to him all his brothers and sisters who had known him before and ate bread with him in his house, and they showed him sympathy and comforted him for all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him. And each of them gave him a piece of money and a ring of gold. And the Lord blessed the latter days of Job more than the beginning. And he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 female donkeys. He also had 7 sons and 3 daughters. And he called the name of the first daughter Jemimah, and the name of the second Keziah, and the name of the third Karen Hapuk. I probably butchered all your names, and if you're in heaven, I apologize. And even if you're not, sorry. And in all the land there was no woman as beautiful as Job's daughters, and the father gave them inheritance among their brothers. And after this Job lived 140 years, and saw his sons and his sons' 4 generations, and Job died an old man full of days. We got through the book of Job in 56 minutes and 55 seconds. So, Job's an important book, and it's an incredible read, and it can be difficult to understand, but through this book, we have learned that Satan accuses us before God. God does not inflict the evil upon us. Evil is allowed to reign in this world. Why? The easy answer is because of sin. Now, once again, if something bad happens to somebody that you know, like they get assaulted or someone gets killed in their family, the immediate response is not, well, sin's in the world and God allows evil, so that's why someone shot your brother. Though you are not wrong, that's not the time to tell that person that. See, Job's friends, the first 3, E, B, and Z, we'll call them E, B, and Z. So Eli, Bill, and Zoe. Eli, Bill, and Zoe did the right thing for the first 7 days. They sat there in silence with Job. And then they were like, well, Job, you must have did something wrong. You're really self-righteous. This is all your fault. And Job, for the most part, still believes in God, still glorifies God, but then he's like, God's doing this to me. God's shooting me with his arrows. And then Elihu, since we already got Eli, Bill, and Zoe, Elihu, that guy for chapters 32 through 37 is like, Job, like, you aren't perfect, you aren't above reproach, but this is not happening because of you. This is not happening, you didn't do something wrong, but you're also not perfect. God is perfect. And then God's like, you know what, Job? Let me ask you some questions. Now, if God asked us some questions, how would we answer? I feel like we would all answer like Job. Be like, that seems to be Job's response. And he tries it the first time, and God's like, no. I got a little bit more I gotta let you know. And so as Christians, we know that God is sovereign. He is almighty. His ways are not our ways. He's seen the end from the beginning. And so, I wrote down something about Schultz's podcast. And self-justification, in that the non-believing world has this way of assuming that we're all basically good people. And Wes Huff's response is that the heart is deceitfully wicked above all. None can understand it. Your heart and my heart will convince you that you are good enough. Your heart will convince you that you are better than you are. Your heart will convince you to follow your passions, to follow your heart. Next time you're in a Walmart, like I work at Walmart, so I hear a bunch of these songs, and once I'm more in the Word, I'm like, man, all these songs are about my feelings, what's right to me. Follow your dreams, follow your passions, do what seems right to you. And that's why people will be like, well, if it's true for you, and it's true, then that's your truth. There is only one truth. And so what I meant by the Schultz podcast is Wes Huff went on the Flagrant podcast, which is Andrew Schultz. He's a comedian. And then Azaz Kagash, I'm sorry, dude, I'm messing up his name. I'll look it up. No, I won't. Go look at the podcast. Sorry, dude. I haven't said his name enough, but there's an Indian dude on there, a Hindu guy. I'm not going to say he's Indian. He's Hindu. And then there's a white dude, a black dude, and then Schultz, the most famous of the people on the pod. And they had Wes Huff on, and I've already done a video about the Billy Carson deal and Wes Huff being on Joe Rogan. But they talk about like a lot of the, and it was a really good conversation. I mean, there's some like cussing in there because that's what their podcast is, but they do seem curious and they ask a lot of questions. And I think the book of Job is a really good book that explains that we really won't know why bad things happen at all times. Like, it's going to be confusing to us because we haven't seen the entire story. So I just trust that God knows what he's doing, that God is omniscient, that God is omnipresent, God is omnipotent, omniscient. He knows everything. He's everywhere. He knows, like, he's timeless, spaceless, and immaterial. So I think there was a question about genocide and about God wiping out the Canaanites, or God commanding Israel to wipe out the Canaanites, which we're going to get to in this series. And it's, well, first off, they didn't. Second off, and this may have not even been on this podcast. This may be on something different that I watched. But, like on TikTok or something. I consume a lot of content. But the point is that the Canaanites pop up later in the story. And so if God commands them to wipe out men, women, children, they don't do it. The children grow up, because people are assuming the children are innocent at this time. I'm going to get to that in a minute. And then the children grow up and oppress Israel as now adults. Then I just have to believe that when God commands something like that, he has a reason. Because he knows what, in this particular instance, right? God knows what the future holds. So when God says these specific people, like when we're going to see when he comes to Abraham, and he says, hey, your descendants are going to get this land, but they're going to have to wait for 400 years to get it because the wickedness of the Amorites is not yet complete. So we're going to get into all that. Anyways, Job is not punished for what Job did. God allows evil to happen. But the great part of the end of this story, of the narrative of the Bible as a story, is that God will destroy evil one day. So, I hope you've liked this episode. Now, going forward, we will be going into the life of Abraham. And everything else will be chronological. Though, when we get to Daniel, it'll hop from present to a little bit of future, back to present. But we'll save a lot of the stuff in Daniel, most likely, for when we get to Revelation. Revelation might have to be its own series. I did a Bible study on Revelation while I was overseas 2 years ago, and a year and a half, 2 years ago. No, it would have been 2 years ago. A little under 2 years, right? And that was like at least 10 to 11 studies to get through the book of Revelation. So we'll see. But anyways, this has been Christ in a Culture War podcast. My name is Jesse Williams. This has been episode 3. Job and Suffering. I'm sure I will name it something different. Of the narrative of the Bible as a story series. I'm going to get off here and upload this. I hope you enjoyed the content. Like, subscribe, share. If not, just enjoy the video. God bless you, and I pray that you have a blessed week. I will try to have the next episode up sooner than a week from now, but there's no guarantees. So God bless you, and peace.